Americans are disappointed with Starmer. When we engage in a major military operation like this, we really want the nation that we have a special relationship with, a nation that we have fought together as brothers for decades, to be with us. I understand there's some differences on this, but we're just disappointed.
This was the president speaking in the Oval Office.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
That was, of course, after Keir Starmer and the British government blocked America's use of British bases for strikes into Iran initially and challenging the legal basis for that American action. We're joined by Fred Fleitz, the former Chief of Staff on President Trump's National Security Council. Hello to you, Fred.
Hey, good to be here.
Good to have you here. It is obviously fair to say that President Trump was, and presumably is, furious with Keir Starmer. What does that mean? How much or how little does that mean for the Prime Minister and Britain's influence in the White House, Fred?
Well, many Americans are disappointed with Starmer. When we engage in a major military operation like this, we really want the nation that we have a special relationship with, a nation that we have fought together as brothers for decades, to be with us. I understand there's some differences on this, but we're just disappointed. I think, maybe our military is larger, but just to have the council of British commanders and British soldiers with us, it would be a better situation. I know there's arguments about this under international law. President Trump made a difficult call. He doesn't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. He's providing a pathway for the Iranian people to take back their country. Yeah. But the argument that's really getting a lot of traction over the last 24 hours is that Iran's missile program is growing so fast. It was becoming a shield that would not be surmountable in another 10 months or so. Iran initiated missile exchanges with Israel during the Biden administration, which I think you know. The purpose of this missile arsenal is to attack Israel, and it's frankly something the U.S. and Israel could not permit to continue to develop.
Right. I mean, can it, though, be said, Fred, that President Trump was speaking for the American people? Because the polls that I see suggest that most Americans disapproved of the attack on Iran.
Well, most Republicans support the attack on Iran, according to polls I saw this morning. But I think you're probably right that there are polls that say that this operation has only been ongoing for a few days. We will see how it goes, what the American people think of it. And obviously, most Americans don't want our country to be involved in a war. And the president and his staff are doing their best to make a case to the American people on why this war was necessary.
Okay, look, the president's remarks have echoed around the world, haven't they? They were cutting. It's fair to say they were rather insulting. Is it not, in your view, possible to disagree with a friend and an ally on a point of policy without resorting to public personal insults?
Well, I mean, you followed President Trump over the years, and he has his own style. Some may say it's unorthodox, some may say it's eccentric, but it's not going to do anything to undermine America's love for the British people, our relationship with the UK. This is a disagreement of the moment, nothing more than that.
Yeah, well, it certainly soured the atmosphere in a way that I don't think any one of us has seen for a very, very long time. I'm not sure that there is a precedent in modern times for that kind of insult directed by a president towards a British Prime Minister. I just wanted your own view, Fred. And I hear that you don't want to fall out with the president yourself, but did you like what you heard?
I'm just saying that President Trump has his own unique style. We've learned how to live with it and deal with it in the United States. I guess it's hard for people in other countries who don't hear it every day. It's endearing to some, maybe not to others. But as I said, it's not going to undermine our fundamental relationship.
Is it going to be difficult, awkward, to put it mildly, do you think, for the King and the Queen, for the royal family, to visit the United States with this bad blood between Britain and America?
I understand that the King and President Trump get along quite well. I don't see why it would interfere with it. In fact, I think it would be a good thing to happen right now to maybe clear the air, to show that there's no daylight between the U.S. and the UK.
Right. I mean, how would you, as someone who's interested, as someone who has an interest in seeing the visit go well and for good relations to be restored, what would be your advice? I don't know if the King would look for it, but I'd love to hear it. Your advice to the King on how to conduct that visit when it comes to contact with the President and in the White House.
Look, I think the King has a long relationship with President Trump. They hit it off well when they met. I think it was early last year. I think it'll be a very fruitful meeting, and I think both sides will just remind the other that our relationship is enduring.
I do wonder then, let me ask you this on a question, an important question of the Atlantic Alliance. Do you think as a result of this chill in the atmosphere that Britain, the Prime Minister, has lost influence in Washington when it comes to, let's say, keeping America fully engaged in the defence of mainland Europe through NATO?
I think the Prime Minister has said some troubling things on national security, and I think it's gotten him in trouble. This statement he made that the UK doesn't engage in regime change from the air, I frankly thought was a little bit laughable, because the UK did that in Libya. So there is a press, and that those operations.
But that went rather badly, Fred, didn't it?
Well, no, I don't disagree with you on that. But to say, as a matter of principle, we don't engage in regime change from the air, the UK has engaged in regime change from the air.
Yeah, but another thing the Prime Minister said was it was important to learn the lessons of history. In that case, that's very recent history, and the result of what happened was chaos. And you could argue the Prime Minister wanted to learn that lesson, couldn't he?
I think Trump's trying to apply lessons from history in promoting regime change without putting troops on the ground, and to give the people of Iran an opportunity to overthrow this government after the horrific violence we saw against the Iranian people, where maybe 30,000 were murdered in early January. They were just protesting for freedom. And I just have to cite the massive demonstrations in London and Berlin, in New York and in Los Angeles, thanking President Trump, thanking the U.S. and Israel for giving their country a chance for freedom, and for killing this vicious leader who's been terrorizing their people for 47 years.
Yeah, but if we're going to address, as you are, the question of whether or not it's appropriate to criticize the notion of regime change from the air, we heard the president yesterday. We heard the president say he can't know. He does not know what will emerge from this war. It could be a more enlightened, a more human regime. It could be something much the same, as bad as today. He accepted that as a possibility, in which case, if that's the outcome and it's a possibility the president accepts, that will make the point that you can't get the regime change you want by bombing.
There's three objectives to this operation: stopping Iran from getting nuclear weapons, at least setting back, if not stopping its missile program, and giving the people of Iran an opportunity to take their government back. I think the last one is going to be the hardest. I don't disagree with that. And I don't know the full plan on how the administration plans to implement that. But I think it was the right thing to do.
All right, Fred Fleitz, pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for coming on. That's
good to be here.
Fred Fleitz, the former Chief of Staff to the US National Security Council.